Hello and welcome to All Lit Up with me, Gilly Fogg, head creative at Lighthouse Studios in Kilkenny, Ireland. In this series, we talk to creative people in the world of animation, film, TV and more about their work and their life, shining a light on what they do. Today we're talking about a creative art that's little celebrated. Foley, the art of performing sound in sync to what's happening on screen. It adds richness, texture and emotion and takes precision and skill to get it right. My Foley artist guest is Ellen Heuer, an award-winning Foley artist who has worked on a slew of Hollywood hits and with some of the greatest directors of the last 40 years. Ellen has a lovely, easy energy, and from her home in LA, where wind chimes tinkled in the background, she took time to look back on her career and reflect. Hello, Ellen. Thank you so much for joining us on All Lit Up. You have been a Foley artist for over 45 years.
Indeed, I have. Long enough to have kissed every single male, female celebrity. You know, it's been a long journey.
Wow, is that part of the job?
The sound.
Oh, the sound!
Yeah, I was just saying, I've kissed almost every leading man and woman in Hollywood at this point. I've just done so many films that's one of the sounds. That's one of the most sought after sounds.
And
sound of people kissing.
Going right back in time, you began life as a dancer.
I did, and serendipitously found my way to doing this. I was choreographing a stage play, Binion's Rainbow, fresh out of, UCLA dance. And I was asked to play the part of Susan the Silent, who's a girl who couldn't speak. She could only dance what she wanted to say. And I turned it down because I was overwhelmed with trying to keep a bunch of non-dancers from breaking their necks on an uneven stage. And it was a lot of work to make it interesting. And the director just didn't give up. And I'm glad he didn't, because I finally accepted. I just thought the idea of dancing what you wanted to say was a very intriguing project, and I knew I could do it easily because I loved music so much. And long story short, there was a girl there who came in as an understudy one night, and we became fast friends. She had a photographic memory and had to learn all the dance numbers, all the musical numbers in one night. We fast became friends, and I admitted to her that I was tired of being a struggling poor dancer. She said, well, come and do this thing with me. Dancers are really good at it. You just, your timing and rhythm, you set the coffee cup down the same time they do. And I couldn't even fathom what it was. But I just thought, well, they're going to pay me how much? I can do that. I'll do that. Yeah. And it just came so naturally to me, having had, my dance teachers were my real mentors, because when you have to learn long bouts of complicated choreography, you develop a certain way of just interfacing with your world. But to then just walk actors was a walk in the park for me. By the time I got to the Foley stage, I just already had what it took, so to speak.
Well, I think for those listeners who might be saying, I cannot fathom what Foley is, can you please give us a short definition just to set the scene on this conversation about what it is that you do?
Yeah. Well, whenever there's a need, a film gets, put on the foreign market, you need to replace the dialogue with French or German or whatever. And you lose all of the production. So the production has to be redone in a controlled environment later. Primarily, when you're on the set, you want to get dialogue, so the microphone is up here, so you can get the dialogue. But then it misses out on all the other subtleties of footsteps or, hand things or whatever. If they're sipping wine, putting down the glass, all of that is done afterwards. It's all filled in later so that they can control on the final mix how to place things. If the director wants to play something up, or if he doesn't want to hear anything at all, maybe like in All That Jazz, where he's doing a film about himself, there were scenes that the directors didn't want to hear anything because we wanted to go inside of Bob Fosse's brain. And so we just played, dimmed out the dialogue and just played the creaky wood chair or the cigarette being put out or the pencil breaks and his breath. And it's very captivating to play with sound like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when people have Foley in mind, people generally understand it as sound effects, and that a Foley artist might be creating the sound effect, custom made. But I think what is perhaps little understood is that you're performing them. It's a performance art like any other.
It is. It has an uncelebrated athleticism all its own. And it's imperative to perform with feeling. I trained as a method actress, so a lot of this stuff just came natural to me, to translate feeling in your legs. One time I had to do this cue for Ironweed, movie with Ironweed, Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson. There are a couple of, homeless people. She's very sick, and I was playing that character with her footsteps, but the sound designer, Kay Rose, who would supervise the Foley sessions, was not hearing the pain in my footsteps. And I didn't know what to do because I was maybe 25 at the time and I'd never experienced that kind of pain. So we worked on it, and I think at the end of the day, I really was in a lot of pain. I don't know if she ever got the performance she wanted. I probably should have put some little pebbles in my shoe to, enhance the sound. But you can tell the difference. There needs to be an emotional connection to what you're doing, a psychological connection to the character. You become that person for 3 weeks or, however long you're on that particular project.
Yeah, because there are so many different roles in filmmaking, and in our sort of branch of it is animated filmmaking, but everyone is contributing to the act of storytelling. Mm-hmm. So I imagine that on a sort of a longer schedule, bigger budget film, you have the opportunity to really sit down with the director and understand what it is in any particular scene that he really or she really wants to emphasize.
Yeah, I had the good fortune to work with David Lynch on his film Lost Highway. And he was such a casual guy, but he meditated and he had a sort of macabre sense of humor. But he was obsessed with hearing the sound of this man's head cracking from the inside out. And I didn't know what I was going to do.
So can you explain that a little bit more?
The character in the film falls back and hits his head on a glass coffee table. And David just wanted to hear it, cracking like it was coming from the inside of his cranium. And normally what we would do is break some celery, and, that's usually our go-to for bones breaking. But I didn't want to do the average thing. I wanted it to be as unique as he was. And I came back the next day and I asked the engineer to get me a tiny microphone, a lavalier, and I just stuck it in my ear and started chomping on celery so that we recorded it like actually inside my head. And I don't know if it actually sounded that much different, but David loved the idea of it so much, just physically seeing that. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff we do. It's just like, it's very inventive. It's creating something out of nothing. It's turning a kitchen sponge into buttering a sandwich or frying some bacon for a rain.
And Ellen, I mean, you've had a long career and you've worked on really classic films, and classic films have a lot of classic sounds, like sounds from what life was like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, which was much more analog. You know, there are a lot of switches, chains, leather, all of these materials that are now sort of old-fashioned. What do you think life sounds like now? Do you think with, you know, our smooth computer interfaces, does life sound more synthetic now in contemporary films?
Well, that's a great question, because the whole idea with Foley is to make it stay in the natural world. And to communicate that, it really takes a Foley artist with feelings that's performing custom sounds to exact sync of what that actor's doing. So it's like painting with numbers, but with sound, if you will. And it's a lot of fun because it's highly creative, it's very exacting, and at the end, you know, you told a story. I have some videos I've done that are just no dialogue. I just use sound to tell the story, and people are completely entertained. So I think sometimes sound can carry us like a script, and it should be seamless. With Foley, there should be no hint that you want to stay immersed in the experience. So you want to blend in. So at the same time you're making a statement, so to speak, you're and telling your own story, it shouldn't be noticed if it's done right, ironically. Foley shouldn't be noticed. Maybe that's why nobody knows what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, only when it's done incorrectly. And as I mentioned, we're largely in the world of animation. I mean, you've worked on some amazing animated films, like Ratatouille would be the favorite. Did you have to immerse yourself in the world of food and restaurants? How did you set up your Foley lab for that one?
I wish. That would have been a fun research project. Well, I had two other partners, and we all would sometimes there'd be so many characters for Pixar that they would storyboard each character because they wanted them to have their own unique sounds attached to them. So I got to develop, Emil, which was the one who would eat everything and always have indigestion. So I made sure he had a little squishy sound with a toy, one of those eyeballs that's inside of a round plastic thing with some water. And then there was films like Cars that was really challenging because there were no footsteps. And they wanted Mater to sound a certain way. Clankies, we had to go to a junkyard and get a bunch of different old metal parts. And the Queen had to be really cool and slick. And it was hard to make each one of them different. I think Sally had to have a really smooth chassis and kind of a sexy. And then The Incredibles was just a lot of fun as well. I got to be Elastigirl, and I just used strips of silk for when she would try to seduce Mr. Incredible, and then I'd use strips of rubber when she was angry at him. And it's amazing how angry rubber can sound if you know how to work it.
And so going back to the fact that Foley is a performance, you're cast as a particular character for each scene.
Well, or for the whole movie, I would just I would stay with one character, like Elastigirl, and then someone else would do Dash, and someone else would do Mr. Incredible.
Are you performing at the same time?
No, we'd each do, one person we'd do one reel at a time, which is usually about 10 minutes. And so I would do Elastigirl just for that reel. And then someone else would come in and do Mr. Incredible for that reel. We
have wonderful our Foley artists here in Ireland, and our best known female Foley artists anyway are definitely Caoimhe and Joan of the Foley Lab. And their lab is an amazing place to visit with so many boxes and shelves packed. Can you describe what the studios and Foley studios that you worked in were like? How did you organize all of that stuff?
Well, each stage kind of had their own unique style of organization. And I was commissioned to build a stage in New Mexico by a LA-based company called Wildfire. And I had the opportunity to build my dream stage, which was a stage that was in a circle. And all of the surfaces were in a pie. And the mic was in the middle. The idea being that you could just pivot it to each surface without having to pick it up and put it in another square, or pick it up and put it in another square. And it worked out. It was beautiful. But I liked doing it the way I liked it. I like to keep everything as much out in the open as possible because I like to stay in this creative mode. And if I have to stop and go look for something, I'm not in creative mode anymore. I'm frustrated mode. I can't find something. And that just was a pet peeve of mine, particularly. Most stages, don't have a real filing system. They just are not that organized. But the projects I would get were so inundated with material, and I had to find a super efficient way to create a workflow so that I could get everything done on time, which was normally not enough time, but somehow that's how I could make it work. Was to stay highly organized and do, all the feet and then do all the props.
And Ellen, given that this is a really, it's sort of a hidden, under-celebrated area of filmmaking, and your own story of how you got into it was complete happenstance. That's amazing that you got to design your own work environment. That sounds like a dream. Where is that space now? And is there training in place to hand these skills down to the next generation? How does that work?
Oh, well, that's a good question, hon. That was a very unique situation. I find that I am graced with many unique situations. That was one of them. But I was struggling because my mom had gotten 4th-stage ovarian cancer, and I wanted to be with her in her final days. So I left that studio, and it eventually just, I guess, went under. The level of work that I was doing and trying to train people to be there, instantly, was hard. And I found that it was easier for me to just do it myself than to try to delegate it and try to get everything in on time and at the standard that people are used to. And it just became, that particular situation was difficult. So that stage doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah, it was so amazing, really. I don't think most Foley stages are designed by Foley artists, and they should be, because they know what they need. It's a very specific kind of art form, and a normal just engineer to come in and dig up some pits is, it's just not going to have the sensitivity that a Foley artist might have when it comes to putting together their, palette, so to speak.
And are there training programs for Foley artists? Are there strands in film school?
They are now, and I teach at USC. They have a Foley stage now there, and there's a few others. Sometimes I teach privately for anyone who's serious about it, but most people I know kind of just got in by happenstance. A friend pulled them in, or...
Yeah, because it does sound like there needs to be an alchemy of... your experience as a dancer, you need to be a storyteller, you need to be physically fit, you need to be a very quick thinker, you need to work well under pressure. That is a lot of different skills.
I think having a background in theater or music and dance will give anybody who wants to do this a heads up. Sometimes I do stand-up, and that's one of the hardest things I've ever done on stage.
Stand-up comedy.
Yeah. So I think if you can do that, I just feel like I could do anything after that, because it requires being very present, and as a Foley artist, you have to have a pretty good sense of just concentration skills.
I was thinking, with this dawn of all the new technology and a lot of things that people do. I mean, even to the point of acting being sometimes replicated by an AI actor.
Scary.
But I was thinking that it would be impossible for Foley. I mean, Foley has to be human created.
Yeah, that's the charm of it, is that it's analog. It grounds the film in reality, and suddenly we don't realize it, but we're more involved when you feel and hear human sounds, or sounds that are traditionally connected to what a human being would do. Even if it's just, I've seen some films. There's one film called The American with George Clooney where he's just walking down this little Italian street and all you hear is his cloth movement. But sometimes that's more captivating. I get drawn in with something like that. And I was watching this little animated short the other night called Butterfly, where this man journeys through his life through water, whether he's swimming competitively and the backstroke is his stroke, and he meets the love of his life, and it's really sweet. But the sound is what drew me into it initially, and then it all sort of came together. It all sort of blended into this beautiful, sweet story.
Oh, well, Ellen, as you know, on this podcast, we always ask our guests to choose a short film. So Butterfly is your film.
I liked Butterfly. There's also another one called Dorothy's Friend. It's just a sweet story. Have you heard it?
Yes, it definitely rings a bell, yes. And I think it's a book adaptation, is that right?
Yeah.
And is that also animated?
It's not. That's live action. I wanted to try to catch up because I knew, short films were not my genre normally, but I have everything on the Academy, so they were from this year. They weren't older films.
Oh, great. Okay, so Butterfly and Dorothy's Friends are your top tips to watch.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I fell in love with Butterfly because of the sound, first of all, and then the story and the writing was very good, very simple. And sometimes I think it's more powerful to just keep things really simple and use sound to draw a person in, sound like it's part of the script.
And Ellen, another thing we regularly ask our guests are looking at your career and having a little distance on it now. Can you name 3 sort of outside conditions, and they could be in the industry or, in society or in the arts, that helped you to succeed?
Yeah, well, I had some of the best mentors. I worked with some of the most incredible sound designers, and I got to develop my ear by their requests. And they gave me the education. And like I said, my dance teachers, Pedro Dupre, Joe Tremaine, Jaime Rogers, they were like the hot choreographers of the time. So all my dance training turned out to be a huge blessing for as far as outside influences. And the people I got to work with, I was always with the creme de la creme, Skywalker Sound. I've had such a blessed career. It just, I think, was what I was meant to do. So, I just worked with great people, my partners, everything. It was just one of those things that I really didn't go looking for. I wanted to be an actress or a rock star, whatever came first. I had much loftier goals than, I'll just be this Foley artist for a while until my acting career takes off. But it didn't, because I wasn't meant to do that.
You found it really creatively satisfying.
It was, and I got to dance and wear headphones and listen to music while I danced in rhythm to the whatever. And those were always one of my favorites.
Do you find, as someone whose hearing is so attuned, do you find yourself sensitive to sound in your general surroundings? Do you design your house in a particular way?
Well, no, but I still pick up props. Even to this day, If I find something that has an interesting sound, I still collect props, and I don't even work, but I can't help it because I love just picking up little gadgety things. And I teach at Crossroads Elementary. It's a private school for kids, and they keep me going, and I help them discover how to find sounds by not using the literal prop. Like a feather duster could be the sound of a bird, or so it's fun to watch them create that loop in their own minds as they figure out other ways to do things besides the obvious.
And perhaps as just a last anecdote, could you tell us a little bit about being asked to create Foley for a film set in space? Where
That's the hardest thing, because there's no sound technically. So when people say, what's the hardest sound you have to do? I say, the sound that doesn't make sound. One time I had to do Tang floating across the capsule in Apollo 13. And I had the engineer just build me this huge air conditioning duct. I got inside and I just used the reflective sound because that was the only thing I could find that would blend and not sound like something, just that wasn't a part of that storytelling. Does that make sense? I don't.
So your brief is to make the sound of Tang. Is that like a soda?
It was a drink they used to give the astronauts. Yeah, and they'd squeeze it. It would come out of a little patch, and it would be like a glob, like a piece of Jell-O. But technically, it shouldn't make sound, but I had to come up with something. One time in Schindler's List, they shot a girl point blank in her head. And now I've never had that experience, but I have to come up with a realistic sound of what that might sound like. And so then you have a whole other problem of the imagery. Sometimes that would really get to me personally, just having to watch violent films over, 12 Years a Slave was very difficult. Mm-hmm. Just the way they would just carry on with the scene, go a little bit longer than it should, and raping people and being raped and stabbing people, and doing that every day, it kind of gets to you. You have to, because I'm empathetic, so that's just where I go. It's not everybody's thing, but I was working so much, and most everything had a very violent tone to it.
Wow, was that a consecutive number of years that there were a lot of heavy and dark themes in your work? I
would just say that Wildfire, the company I worked for, most of their themes were violent. I had a plethora of different films and different styles, and fortunately you can't choose. You have to do what's you really have to engage with what physically is happening to perform that. And your body doesn't know the difference. So it doesn't know that you're not really stabbing someone. You're still releasing cortisol, the stress hormone, that, is just not good. You do that for days and weeks and years on end, and I think it kind of takes its toll.
Wow, Ellen. So what was your final film? What was the last film you worked on?
Oh, it was for Zoe Kravitz, and it was called Blink Twice.
And there was a lighter theme to end on, I hope.
No, not at all. But I have no control over that. It's like you do what, I was always happy to get the work, but sometimes it got a little bit, the burnout, the psychological burnout, and physical. It's a very physical job, a job for younger people.
Yeah. And okay, on that note, all of the good parts and the creativity and the performance and the satisfaction, where should anyone listening to this who is young and thinking, oh my God, I would love to do that? Can you point them, even if it's just a website or an educational institution would be amazing, but where should they go, or what should they do to make that connection?
Well, they can go to my book when it's finished at the end of May. It's an instructional book, and it illustrates very clearly, how to find shoes, how to walk in the shoes, how to, do props, and just, it really breaks it down.
Oh, what is the name of your book, Helen?
Oh, it's If These Shoes Could Talk.
Amazing. And it's coming out at the end of May 2026.
Yeah, you'll be able to get it on Amazon.
Oh, that's great. We are definitely going to link to that in the comments for this podcast. Wow, Ellen, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. What an interesting life.
Thank you. This was fun, like I said, and I love your questions. They were all good questions, so I could go on and on.
It's fascinating. Well, thank you so much for being on All Lit Up, and really cannot wait to order that book. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Ellen, and do look out for her book, If These Shoes Could Talk. Great title. Filled with Ellen's humour, warmth and thoughtfulness, we know it will be a great read. That's all for now. If this is your first time listening to All Lit Up, please check out our previous episodes. Each one has a wonderful guest who shares their stories and insights. And if you've already listened to them, then thank you so much. And please stay tuned for the next episode of All Lit Up.